locking back in with us, shoot 35 and counting right now. Um, Obviously, we've had a bunch of different speakers that's come on, from the men's side, women's side. Fortunate enough today to have two different types. Obviously, Aaron being an ops at Colorado State, and then John, who will be coming in later after he gets off his meeting. But John's with the Portland Trail Blazers as the video coordinator. And just before we get going, just want to thank obviously Steve, Mike McPile, who's going to be coming on a little later. He's in a meeting right now. And then obviously the infamous G, who I have no idea still what he looks like. Uh, but getting into starting off, first up we have Aaron Katsuma. I hope I didn't butcher that. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Aaron, what's crazy is we've never met. I think we've always talked about scheduling, and thankfully we've never scheduled them because they've always been pretty good. But a little background from Aaron, he's a University of Minnesota graduate. He's served in all kinds of capacities while he was at Minnesota, from a manager to a GA, and then a director of player personnel assistant. From there, he moved on and was a ops at Drake. And this year, you just finished your second season at Colorado State. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yep. As a ops, and I know obviously us as coaches, we're always trying to win and then win at the highest level. And Aaron's been fortunate enough to be a part of the 2014 NIT championship team and has made 2 NCAA tournament appearances, and I think he's won 2 games. But nonetheless, I'll let Aaron take the reins and kind of talk about his story, and then obviously I have some guided questions, and I'll obviously, the chat box, feel free to throw in a question or say you have a question and unmute yourself and just go ahead and ask. But it's a free-flowing conversation, and I think Aaron has a lot of good stuff to be able to share with the group. So Aaron, go ahead.
Appreciate it, Coach. And, first off, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And there's a lot of familiar names, but there's also a lot of names that are not familiar. And so I look forward to connecting with all of you afterwards and answering any questions you may have. And also just want to thank my coworkers, J.R. Blount, Emma Montai, and Ali Frogmanesh, and even Coach Thorson. I think all of them are on here. And so I think that just shows everyone the kind of support I have and the supporting cast that I'm fortunate to work with every day. And so for me, basketball was my first passion. Started playing when I was 4, played throughout high school. But what really got me interested in coaching was when I was 12. I detached my retina and became blind in one eye. And so from that point on, I kind of knew playing basketball was never going to be in my future. I coached my first AAU team this summer going into my freshman year of college. And that was kind of when I fell in love with the idea of coaching. And so when I was exploring universities to attend out of high school, I applied to 3, Marquette, UW-Madison, and Minnesota. And at the time, being a manager was something that I had interest in, but didn't know a ton about. And so, but when I got the call from Coach Smith at Minnesota, who's a Hall of Famer, who's at High Point University right now, that was something that I couldn't turn down. And so I was a student manager at Minnesota for 4 years. Like Coach Santos said, we had some success. Coach Smith last year was my junior year. We made it to the tournament, beat UCLA in the first round when they had Shabazz Muhammad, the Ware twins, and then we lost to a really good Florida team in the second round. And then my last 4 years at Minnesota, I was fortunate to work with some really great coaches. The head coach was Richard Pitino. When he came in, he was 30 years old. He was a different breed than what I was used to with Coach Smith. But Nonetheless, I learned a ton from him. And then I was fortunate enough to become a director of basketball operations for Coach Medved at Drake University. Um, Coach Medved's from Minnesota. He was actually a student manager at Minnesota. Um, and his story and his success at both Furman and as an assistant was kind of what drew me to a change of scenery. And I've been fortunate to work with our same staff now for 3 years. And when he got the job at Colorado State, he brought all three assistants and myself. And I think that just shows you the kind of loyal person he is. Um, you know, this job obviously have to recruit in different areas, and he trusted our staff to build connections where we didn't have any and hit the ground running. And so that's a little bit about my journey. In terms of, for me, how I got here, um, it's been quite a ride. So when I was at Minnesota under Coach Smith, um, you know, essentially I just had to show up to practice, be there an hour before, be there an hour after, make sure everything was clean, game set up, make sure the jerseys were ready, do the laundry, etc. Um, and so then when Coach Pitino got hired, it was a total 180. I was expected in the office anytime I wasn't in class. He gave me different projects. Um, and basically, I kind of became his right hand man in terms of whatever he needed done. Um, I was always the guy to do it. Whenever any of our assistants needed anything done, I was the guy to do it. And no job was too big for me. And that's kind of where I um, maybe stood out, was that, whether it was picking up one of their kids from school or taking them to the airport for a recruiting trip at 4:30 in the morning or whatever. It didn't matter. I was always available, and that's kind of where I took pride in doing those things. And eventually, it turned into uh, on-campus tours with official visits and unofficial visits, and recruiting graphics and all types of things. And so that's where that's really what I took pride in. And then as I moved on and became ops with Coach Medved at Drake University, that first year, a lot of my responsibilities were organizing travel, overseeing academics, just making sure everybody knew what was going on from a day-to-day basis. And that was a really neat experience, which fortunately I don't have to do anymore. Emma, who's on our staff, has to organizes all that stuff now. And so I'm fortunate with that, with her. And then coming out here this past year, I've overtaken scheduling, which, if you can ask Coach Santos, is a beast of its own. Probably the second most important job outside of recruiting, in terms of setting yourself up for making a tournament run. But it's been, an unreal experience, and I'm just super fortunate to be able to do what I love on a daily basis and to work with our student athletes and our coaching staff. So
Yeah, no, I think that's all good stuff. Can you talk about a little bit more? You obviously mentioned you've worked for Hall of Fame coach Tubby Smith, Richard Pitino, and then now Coach Medved. Just some of the differences between each of those coaches.
sure. Yeah. So, I mean, Coach Smith, I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to meet him or hear him speak, but he might be the most charismatic, genuine person that you might ever encounter. But on the court, he's very old school. He's set in his ways. He's been successful everywhere he's been, whether it's Georgia, Tulsa, Kentucky, where he won a national championship, Memphis, Texas Tech. I mean, every day was basically you knew what you were going to do. I don't think they ever met in terms of what they were going to go over in practice, because we did the same thing every single day. And so just, watching him and observing him, just the consistency of what he asked from our players every single day is something that I'll take away from him. In terms of Coach Pitino, like I said, he became the head coach of a Power 5 high major program at the age of 30. I'm sure he wasn't the first choice. But the way he handled some of the adverse situations that we encountered, or that he encountered, you know, during the 4 years I was there is something that I'll always just kind of remember. I mean, we had a couple guys, um, not to go into it, but sexual assault and all kinds of things, and just the way he handled adversity head on, and he didn't run from it. Obviously, his dad's Rick Pitino, and legendary Hall of Fame coach, and everyone thinks that he's just like his dad, but he's actually a lot more like Billy Donovan, um, who I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, head coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder. But um, like I said, just the way he handled the adverse situations, he could have hid behind a curtain, but he was kind of in the forefront and took things head on. And then in terms of Coach Medved, I think like I said, he's extremely loyal. I think that goes a long way in this business, just loyalty, and he's also probably the most honest person I've ever been around. He tells you exactly how it is. Um, the one thing that stands out to me with him is that he's not a micromanager. He allows our staff to do our jobs, and not saying that the other two coaches I've worked for didn't, but he just gives you the freedom to get your work done, and is not constantly looking over your shoulder. He trusts that we will get our stuff done, and so those are the things outside of X's and O's that I'll take away from those three in terms of the personality, just the way they go about things. But each of them are extremely different, um, and so I've been very fortunate.
Yeah. With Coach Medved, you talked about he was a Minnesota alum.
hmm
Is that how you got connected with him, or was there like something that kind of meshed it together?
So I had heard of him when I was there, and he was the head coach at Furman, and so we actually played them when I was a grad assistant at Minnesota. We played Furman; they almost beat us. Um, but one of our assistants, Dave Thorson, he's a legendary. He was a legendary high school coach in Minneapolis at De La Salle High School. Has coached pros. Reed Travis, who was at Stanford, Tyrell Terry, who's at Stanford. He's had a number of high major players, and he's been McDonald's All American, Jordan Brand Classic type of elite high school coach. And so he joined the staff at Drake as an assistant, and that was kind of my tie-in. Also on staff when I was at Minnesota was Ben Johnson, who's now an assistant at Xavier. And Ben played for Coach Thorson in high school. And so that was also a connection there where, I just was picking Ben's brain, hey, what's going on at Drake? I'd love to get in the mix there if possible. And fortunately, I was one of two people that were able to get an interview, and just the rest is history, I guess. So, but yeah, that's kind of, it's, for me, it was more who I knew instead of what I know. And I think that's part of, um, you know, this coaching industry as well. Is you might not know everything. Obviously, for me, at least every day I'm learning something different. But it's who you know, and it's the interactions and the connections and the network that you can create just through being, yourself and a genuine person. That goes a long way. And I think that's another area in which I take pride in, is just to be myself, and stay in contact with people that that I've come across and who have really helped me, and who I can help in returns. So
No, I think that's a big deal. Being relational, having a web, and then also utilizing that web.
right,
Um, and one thing that you kind of brought up that I think is interesting. Right? I don't know how many people here who have interviewed for different positions, but obviously, so you had that relationship, you had that connection to Coach Medved. But what was like that interview process like for you? Because obviously, I know the interview process is always different for every coach, whoever, for each spot that they're hiring. But how was that for you? Was it just a conversation? Was it, how do you do this? How you do that? What can you bring to the table? Like, how did that go for you?
yeah, sure. So Yeah, I was in communication with Coach Thorson essentially the whole time, and I hadn't heard. So he got the job probably in early April. I hadn't heard from Coach Medved directly, but I had, you know, been talking to Coach Thorson, having been there as well. He was kind of giving me things, and so uh, while I was waiting, I just put this binder together, and actually, I've been helping some other people, but I just do this thing together, and so when it came time to it, if I had the opportunity, I was prepared, and he called me maybe 2 weeks after he got the job, and I drove down there and we had a conversation. Actually, they were in a staff meeting, the three assistants and coach, and they're talking about recruiting. And I just sat there and listened. And we went to lunch. And then afterwards, I had about an hour conversation with them. And he asked me kind of like what the questions you just asked. What's your biggest strength? What's your biggest weakness? If I were to hire you, what are the first 10 things you would do? But all of those things I had thought about and I had prepared leading up to it. And so I felt, you know, really comfortable leaving there. I knew that he had one other person coming to campus, maybe a second behind me. But, I just try to put my best foot forward and be honest with him as much as, just truthfully honest with them. And then, um, like I said, fortunately, I was able to get it. But funny story, actually. I don't know if Ali's on here. He was trying to, but when I was in the process, they were recruiting a kid from overseas, and they needed his transcript translated. And so he asked me to. They didn't have. It might have been a German transcript or something, but they didn't have anybody on campus to get it translated. So he asked me to go find somebody at Minnesota and get this transcript translated. And I did. It cost me $275 and never saw that money again. But and he ended up going to Davidson, but and is now an all league player. But it's just a funny story that again, it was just one of those things where um, whatever it took, I was willing to do it, um, and it's I don't regret it at all. So
Yeah, you mentioned, what are the some first 10 things like that you would do if you were to get the job? What would, like, right now, if someone was hiring, and I'm not asking for 10 things, but just,
right.
from a perspective, what are some of those things that are important that you've got to hit the ground running right now?
Obviously, building a connection with your staff and current players, incoming players. Um, the second thing that I knew that I had to do right away was get in contact with uh, academic advisors, whoever that was, because obviously I knew academics was important, really important to coach. I mean, we treat academics the same as practice. So if you have a tutor, study hall, whatever, if you're late for that, it's like you're late for practice. So that was something I knew right away. I'd have to get in touch with them. People in administration, custodial, housing, dining, all the people who touch our program. I made it a point of emphasis to reach out to and at least introduce myself, walk over to them when I got on campus, and just so we had a face-to-face interaction. They knew who I was, and I know who they were, and if anything were to come up, they knew that they could come to me. Um, Recruiting, where are we at with recruiting? How can I assist there? Whether it's putting together a master recruiting list of each coach's players, where they're from, position, etc., depth chart, all that kind of stuff. That was another thing. Camp. Obviously this is a different time right now, but camp's a big one for ops people. Just organizing camp, gear. Again, where are we at with the gear? Is it ordered? Um, do the guys need anything else? What do they like? What does the staff like? What do we don't like? Like coach doesn't like hoodies, so we don't get hoodies. We just get long sleeve dry fits. That's all he wears. So just figuring out things like that. Um, Travel. Um, you know, that's obviously a big job for an ops guy. So or ops girl. So our hotel secured, flight secured. Um, who do we use for meals, all that kind of stuff. I mean, those are some of the things right away where I had a checklist of, like I said, 12 things, and just went down the line and say, okay, day one, this is what I want to get done. Day two, etc. So, and then budget's a big thing as well. So just understanding what your budget is, and the different lines, and different areas where you can spend, or maybe where you can save, and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. No. Pablo has a question. Pablo, you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask?
Yeah, I
you kind of
doing, Coach?
Hey, Pablo, try. You don't really have great connection. You're breaking up. Pablo, you there?
I got a
Devontae,
question.
yeah,
Go
go ahead.
ahead. Devontae, you got a question? Go ahead.
No, I just saw Devontae coach against Coach Thorson when he was a high school coach. So, did you win?
I coached at Tartan High School.
Okay.
We lost that year.
Okay.
But he's definitely a good coach. He won 7 years in a row of state championships.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's a hell of a guy. I haven't met him personally, but I know he's a great guy.
Yeah. No, we're lucky to have him on our staff. So, Coach Shane.
Yeah. Hey, man. Thank you so much, Aaron, for jumping on. This is great. I'll ask a question while we're waiting for Pablo to get back on. So you've worked for Sir. I know. I used to work Toby Smith's camp. Great guy.
Yeah.
A few of your people, Coach Espo and Bender,
Yeah.
friends of mine.
Bender. Yep.
And good people to work around, and you've got a network of people. Medved's a great guy too. I got to meet him as well, and I could tell he's a rock star whenever I first met him. How do you, moving forward, when do you utilize or capitalize using Coach Smith for job opportunities? Guy
Sure.
like Toby Smith picking up the phone, calling, obviously more than 9 out or 10 out of 10 people's going to answer his phone call, right? But
Right.
how often do you use it, or not just him, but even Patino and all? And what are
Yeah.
your strategies in doing that?
Sure. So, I have a pretty how do I say this? I love the job that I have right now. I'm pretty fortunate because I get to do a lot of basketball stuff. I don't have to worry about the day-to-day stuff, and so I'm pretty fortunate that my boss, Coach Medved, kind of views me as a fourth assistant and uses me that way. But when the time comes, obviously one day, the next step for me is hopefully to become an assistant coach, and it is leaning on those connections, and hey, for example, if somebody were to get a job and somebody I know knows that guy that got the job, I mean, just having them lob a call and say, hey, I got somebody that might have interest in joining your staff, and that's kind of how it came about with me moving on from Minnesota to Drake. Was that I saw Coach Medved had gotten the job, and I just went up to Ben and I said, Ben, um, have you talked to Coach Medved? What's he thinking in terms of his ops position? Do you know who else he's hiring? And so once I found out, Ali Frokmanas was going to be on the staff. He had been in Nebraska, so that Big Ten tie. Once I found out that Coach Thorson was joining the staff, I mean, I used to, when Coach Thorson would come to practice, I'd have to go park his car. So that's just small things like that, where I didn't care, and I got to have a conversation with Coach Thorson before he would walk in the gym, and I got to know him that way. And it didn't matter how I got to know him. I just knew that he was a really good high school coach, and so I built a connection with him there. But then when he got the job, he knew my name, and then he called Coach Bettino, and that's kind of how it works. At least how it worked for me is that I had this network of people that I had built relationships with, who believed in me and were willing to put their neck out there and make some calls, and that's where I got lucky. So
Yeah, and I think you've done a great job to this point. Obviously, having held so many hats at Minnesota, and using your connections to be able to get you to where you are today. I just wanted to touch on some of the things that you said just for the group. Like, I think it's really, really important that, when you first get to campus, you're being seen. People know who you are. They know you represent men's basketball or even any sport at that, because that's
right,
important. They need to know what you're dealing with. So that way, when you're firing off emails and you need something done, they know who you are. And now, it's not a quick fix all the time, but it's something that's a little bit easier to get done because they know you, they've seen you.
right,
Another thing was, predicting what's coming down the line, especially as an ops. Like I was an ops for, I think, I don't even know how many years, but still feel like I'm an ops. But predicting what's coming down so it doesn't get to your head coach.
right,
And you directly said it, but following up. I think whether you're an assistant, you're a head coach, you're an ops, you're a video, you're a manager. I think whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is you're being assigned to do, I think it's always important to follow up and know that the job, housing got done, everything's signed and sealed. It's
right,
not
right,
just me and you are doing scheduling. It's not just hey, it's a verbal, okay, where's the contract? Like, it's always going back and checking the box just to make sure it's done. And obviously you saying those things, I always feel like it's harder to um, explain, just off top. Is that kind of something that's how it's been for you? You just because you're always moving, I'm assuming.
I haven't found it all too difficult. I mean, whenever I come in contact with somebody, I ask them for their contact information and save it and lock them in. And whether it's a week or a month goes by or a year, just check in on people constantly. And um, don't get me started on game contracts because that's a whole different story. Um, but just for me, I just we took the disc assessment, and I'm straight I, probably as high as I can go. And so I love to be around people. I like to talk to people. I'm sure if you ask these guys on staff that work with me, they probably get annoyed with me how many times I ask them to do something on a daily basis. And so for me, connecting with people has become second nature. And uh, you know, like I said, for me, it's just no job was too big. I took pride in every role I had, and so just coming from the ground up. I mean, people come from different places, and so um, I try to connect with them as wherever they are. So
Yeah. Anybody have any questions that they want to throw out there?
AK, I got a quick question. I'm gonna slide in
yeah,
real quick. How do you? What are two questions? One, what are some nuggets that you can give to Dobos out there that you have? I know every Dobo's got some nuggets, some tricks that they kind of do. And two, how do you stay relevant in the X's and O's and player development as a director of ops?
yeah. So in regards to the Nuggets, I'll just say first be extremely organized. Have a planner. Each night before you go to bed, write down what you have the next day, um, and then follow through. That's the biggest thing because sometimes things can slip through the cracks, and as an ops, you can't allow that to happen. And so you got to constantly be like Coach Sancho said, checking up on things, making sure things are getting done, making sure your student athletes are on time to whatever obligations they may have. But just being extremely organized. And then the second one is just leaning on people who you work with. I mean, Coach Blount, who's on here, he was an ops. I'm sure um, for ops people, they know other ops people in the industry, and so just leaning on the people who have been through it and who know the trade. My first year at Drake, I was constantly in Coach Blount's office asking them, okay, hey, what hotels did you stay in the year before? What bus company did you use? Who are your contacts at United? All those things. And so, again, just leaning on the people who and trust and have your best interest. And then, in terms of your second question, like I said, I'm fortunate. Coach Medved allows me to do a ton of basketball things. One thing and I can show you guys here that we started this past year was that, he always came to Ali and I asking for different offensive ideas, whether it's sets or baseline out of bounds. So actually, this is not what I wanted. So, but I probably watch anywhere between 17 to 25 college basketball games a week. And so we had this good actions folder. And so over time, as I'm watching games, if he's looking for a post action, I have different things that, I could watch and say, okay, does this fit into what he's asking? Does this fit into what we're looking for? How does this fit into something that we run already? And it's funny, two-thirds into the year, we were struggling to score, and we had a bunch of post sets for our four-man. And so he asked me to, he asked our staff to come up with an idea of how we can into our offense. And so that's something that, I took pride in as well, is, if coach had something that he was looking for in terms of offensive sets or baseline out of bounds. I mean, I had stuff that I had clipped out that I was, had seen from somebody else that we could run that might fit into how we're playing or the style that we were playing. So, so these are just a couple clips that I pulled that we took from Murray State, and we're able to get our 4s and 5s in the box, because we were, I want to say, between our two postmen, they were 1.05 points per shot, which is pretty good. I think the NCAA average was 0.91. And then whenever we got a post touch to a catch and shoot opportunity, that was 1.20 points per possession, whereas the NCAA average was 0.97. So anytime we got the ball, we ended up coming back and winning that game. But we were down 19 in the second half. So,
Coach Brewer, go ahead and ask your question.
I was asking, was that video database through Synergy?
So, like I said, I typically watch anywhere between 17 and 25 games a week outside of our games. I'll have one game on an iPad, one game on the computer, one game on the TV, and I'm just constantly watching. It might be a SWAC game, it might be a Big West game, it might be a Pac-12 game, ACC, it doesn't matter. I love watching college basketball. And so if there was something that I came across that I really liked, I would just write down the time of when that play or set happened. And then I could go back the night before and clip it, or I could send it to our video coordinator and be like, hey, Joe, 17-27 of the Gonzaga San Francisco game, Gonzaga ran this action, can you clip it? And we just started a database. And so that's whenever coach asked me, hey, we need something to, we need a different post set, or we need a dribble right set, or how can we get Adam a look from three? I mean, we would just go to that and just kind of say, hey, how does this fit in? Can that, is there something that we run that we can incorporate something like this? Or that's just kind of how it started. And so we continually add to it. Sometimes the actions are too complicated and coach gets mad at me because I'm bringing too much different stuff to the table, but it certainly has helped us on a few occasions. So.
Hey, AK, another question.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you take on the bench? Well, what's your role game day bench?
Sure. So I'm in the first chair right next to coach, and my primary responsibility is keeping track of the vital stats, so fouls, timeouts, that good stuff. Obviously knowing who the officials are by face and name. That's important. And then I also keep track of opposing team stats or play calls. Sorry, opposing teams' play calls. And so something else that coach gave me this past year, more so than any other year, was he basically expected me to know the scout for every opponent we were playing. And so whether I was working with JR or Ali or Thor, on the bench, I know every play call, or I try to know every play call. And so I could relay to our guys, hey, this, you hear punch, it's a back screen into a dribble right action. So it's just, that was something that I took pride in. And that was those two were my main responsibilities on the bench. And then in addition to that, on timeouts, we had shot tracker technology. I don't know how many of you have heard of that, but basically the Mountain West paid for this deal called Shot Tracker, and we were able to have an iPad on the bench and see different analytics, shot charts, lineups, all kinds of stuff. So that was another one of our deals.
How often does Coach Medved use that during timeouts?
Not during timeouts generally. It might be me just looking at the iPad and saying, hey, okay, they're 10 for 11 inside the paint. We really got to emphasize walling up, taking charges, whatever it is. Or something we were able to look at was 1 pass possessions versus 5 pass possessions. Maybe we were 0.67 points per shot in 1 pass possession versus 1.2 versus 5 pass possessions. So, I would relay that information to one of our assistants, one of the two that probably didn't have the scout, and say, hey, we're really good when we're moving the ball, when we're coming down and jacking a quick 3 in transition. Like we're not as effective this game. So that's kind of how we use that technology. And then halftime, if there was some outliers, we could address the team, and it's just reinforcement.
Coach Ardilla, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
What's up, Aaron? It's RJ.
What's up, RJ?
What's a regular game day look like for you, kind of continuing on with Coach Yang's question?
Sure. So, if we're playing at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, we'll bring our guys in at 1:45. I'll make sure they're all here. We'll hop in the film room for about 15, 20 minutes, just go over some last minute things. Generally, we watch baseline out of bounds the day of the game. 2 o'clock, we'll hit the court. Something we did differently this year was that we kind of simulated a game. So we might go the first 10 minutes and run through the baseline out of bounds stuff, but then we would tip the ball up, and our first 5 would go against our scout team. We would sub how we would sub in the game, and that's kind of what I was responsible for, just making, subbing guys in and out. 3 o'clock we eat. Between 3 and 5:30, I would just kind of, get my vital sheet prepared, make sure I had a scouting report, just make sure, and then once 5:30 hit, just made sure everybody was back in the gym. Our coaches do a great job organizing shooting times. So we start as early as 5 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game. And it's just one guy with one coach getting game shots up for about 10, 15 minutes. And then I just basically sit and watch, and hopefully we win the game. But that's pretty typical what a game day would look like for us.
Cool. Thanks.
Hold on. So you guys do instead of a shoot around, you guys do like a mini walkthrough or run through?
Yeah, we kind of do a.
Huh?
So yeah, 5 hours before the game, we'll do kind of a simulated, quick. Okay, here's they'll know the first play of the game. They'll know our first baseline out of bounds play. They might know the first three sets that we might run. And so yeah, we just get out there, we tip the ball, and say, hey, okay, this is the first set of the game, go run it. Then scout team will call something, they'll take the ball in the net, they'll run something. We got to be able to call it out and guard the action. And we just kind of go about 60, 70% speed and just run through some of their actions, make sure we we go over anything, and at the end, then if there's an action that we didn't go over or something that we want to clean up real quick, we use the last 15, 20 minutes to kind of do that. So, but yeah, that's something we did differently this year, where we kind of simulated, okay, here's a jump ball. This is what we're going to run first. This might be what we run second. And so our guys knew, yeah, 5 hours before the game, what the first play was, and what the first baseline on a bounds was, and press break, all that stuff. So,
Did you like that setup? You think it worked well?
I mean, year one we were 12-20. Year two we were 20-12. So, I don't know if it helped us, but I just, with such a young team, I mean, we started two true freshmen, we started two true sophomores, and we had two out of our first three off the bench were freshmen, true freshmen, and so I think it just helped them. It just gave them an expectation of, okay, this is what we're going to run first. This is how we need to run it. This is the pace we need to run it at. And then our scout team, I mean, Coach Blount, he played at Loyola Chicago. He's kind of the head of the snake of the scout team, and so he was making sure our guys are getting a good look on the other end defensively in terms of what they'll see, and the pace and precision that they'll have to execute in guard. So, but yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. Something else that we incorporated this year is we wrote all of our offensive sets on a whiteboard. We didn't do much of yelling out play calls. We had a whiteboard. Coach Farouk Manesh, every game, was in charge of writing down, made basket, this is what set we're running. Any misses or turnovers, we ran in transition. We had our secondary offense. They knew it. We didn't run a set on a miss. But any made basket, we slow it down and run a set. And Coach Farouk Manesh was in charge of that. So that's another reason why we decided to do a simulation in terms of our shoot-arounds. So.
We'll go with a couple more questions. Coach Lopez, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Aaron, how you doing, man? Good to finally.
Good. How are you? Yeah, good to meet you officially.
Yeah, and so my question is based around, like, when you're hungry, people are hungry for a job. They're saying, "Man, I'll do anything just to be part of the program." Was there ever a point where it was like you felt like you were being used when you wanted to be used, and then you kind of hit a wall where it was like, my ego's a little bruised, man? And if so, how do you insulate yourself from that, as far as like not feeling like you're being used, even though that's the whole point of you being there?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. There were definitely times. There were some tedious jobs. One, for instance, we had a kid 6'9", 215, and we were trying to get him up to 235, and so every meal, didn't matter if it was breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack at 11 o'clock, I had to go over to his dorm and eat and watch him eat. And we would lift at 6:30 the next morning, and I have to be there at 6 a.m. to make sure everyone was there as a GA. There were times where we bought these custom, at Minnesota, we bought these custom dumbbells, and the moisture would rust them up. And so we'd be on our hands and knees with toothbrushes, scrubbing these dumbbells so they wouldn't rust over. And so there were definitely times where I was like, what am I doing? But I look back, and that specific strength coach was probably my biggest advocate at the end of the day, and saw something in me that maybe I didn't even see in myself. And so I guess that's another piece of advice that I would share, is that your strength coach spends a lot of time with your student athletes, and so they play a vital role. Like, Coach Pitino's, any night before the game, any time he had a question, he would always call our strength coach. And so at the end of the day, I knew his presence meant a lot to Coach Pitino, and so whatever I could do to help him, like, I knew it'd get back to him. So that's kind of how I overcame it. But there was definitely times where, 5 o'clock at night, and I'm sitting in the weight room with a toothbrush, with trying to get rust out of a dumbbell was not what I envisioned. But I probably wouldn't be here if it weren't for that as well. So
Good stuff, man. Appreciate it.
Coach Alato, you there? He had a quick question.
Yep.
There he is.
Well, hi, good morning, guys. I'm calling from the Philippines. So, Coach AK, how you doing? Just have a question about your the shot tracker app.
Yeah.
Is this something that was custom fit to the specifications that you guys wanted as a team, or was this already pre-built as a system for teams?
So it's pre-built, but the people behind the scenes at Shot Tracker can give you some more information in regards to what you're specifically looking for. So if it's something that we emphasize, we can go back to them and say, hey, like, this is something that, can you go back and look at it? Because they chart everything as well. So they're able to build out different reports that we might be looking for. But yeah, 2 years ago, it was basically a trial. We were part of a trial game with Boise State at their place, and in preparation for the conference tournament, they installed it for the 2018 conference tournament, and then the Mountain West decided to purchase it for all member institutions. And so yeah, we've been pretty fortunate. They installed, there's about 12 to 16 sensors in our main gym, in our practice gym. We have to use special basketballs with a chip in it. Each player has to wear a tag in the back of their jersey, and so it's pretty unique.
Yeah, I've
and
heard
we're able
about
to
that.
we're able to get a lot of information from it. And the best part is you can't BS the system. So in the summer when we would have our guys here, we'd have the 1500 shot club, and these guys would have to wear their shot trackers, and that's kind of how we knew how many shots they were getting up was they'd wear their sensors and get in the gym on their own, and we'd be able to see if they reached their goal or not. And if they didn't, we'd ask them why not. So
How about in real-time games? Do you have somebody specific to jot down the shots, or do you guys have the tags on it already?
Yep. So an hour and a half before the game, our managers put the tags in their jerseys and make sure everything's up and running. We had a manager by the name of Logan, who's awesome. He just graduated, but he was controlling the iPad throughout the game, and so obviously there's some errors. Sometimes a rebound would be considered a putback or something like that. So he could go back into the iPad and say, okay, no, this was a rebound instead of a putback, and whatever. So, but yeah, he was constantly monitoring the iPad during the game, and then at timeouts he would hand it over. We'd look at it, and if he saw something or if I saw something, then we would go to one of our assistants to be like, hey, this we're really struggling here. We're really doing well here. So
You generate the analytics based on the tags that how the movement of the players are on the court.
Yep. So each guy, yeah, like I said, you can see in real time where each player is on the floor. Just looking at the iPad, these sensors ping about every 1/100th of a second. They ping, and so exactly where our guys are, where the ball is, the app or the tracker know who's shooting the ball, whether it goes in, whether it's a make or a miss, assists, all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty high tech.
And if like you are at an away gym, so you guys go there early to set up the sensors on the
Nope.
court?
Every gym in the Mountain West had it. So it was only for Mountain West League games, and so, but every Mountain West gym had it. And then our guys would just have to put the tags in on the iPad. We'd have to say which gym we were in, and then we were good to go. So.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it was pretty. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'll put you short right there, Aaron. And as always, after our next guest speaker, after he concludes, we can all jump back and forth if anyone has any other questions.
Yeah, Mike snuck in here.
Yeah, before we get over to John, Mike may or may not be on a call right now, but I just want to give him a huge shout. Where he was
My
being
head's
so-
spinning. My head's spinning, fellas. I don't know what's happening.
There he is.
I'm
Everything
like,
all
I'm
right? Should-
as good as it can possibly be. I mean, this is
Head coach Mike Magpio. Is that what it's going to be?
thank you, guys. I'm working on retention right now. So I'm on the phone behind the scenes here, but I was logging on as much as I could, Aaron. So thanks,
No, man,
guys. Appreciate it.
that's big time, Coach. Appreciate you doing you having this platform along with Steve and Coach Santos. I mean, I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to speak, and uh, it goes a long way. So I appreciate it, and thanks for everybody tuning in. If I can ever be of any assistance, I'll drop my number and my email in the chat. So feel free to hit me up anytime. And yeah, Coach, that's big time. Hey, HBC.
Thanks, fellas. Thanks. You're next, man. You're next.
Congrats, Coach Mike.
Thank you, guys. Let's get to Yim over here. Coach Yim, I want to hear all this.
No, I know. But without further ado, our next speaker is John Yim. A little bit about him. He was a Cal State Fullerton graduate, coached high school and AAU. If I'm right, he never did anything collegiately. Made a really good connection. Ended up being a video intern for the Clippers for a year. And after that year, he was able to latch on with the Portland Trail Blazers. And if I'm right, he's finishing his 7th year as the video coordinator and developmental coach with the Blazers. So without further ado, Coach Yim, John Yim.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. I'm real privileged to be on here. I'm very grateful. Very blessed to be here. So thank you.
Coach, go ahead and kind of tell us, how you kind of got to where you are. And I know you have some film stuff, but obviously the journey is always a big part of where you are and what you're doing. So can you touch and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. As Anthony said, I coached high school basketball for 10 years in Southern California. And at one of the high schools I was at, I made a really strong connection with the shooting coach, Bob Tate, who had just been let go by the New Jersey Nets. And Bob was known as Jason Kidd's shooting coach. He's the one that helped Jason Kidd learn how to shoot. And he lived in Orange County, and he would come to the local high schools and offer to run shooting camps for the kids at the school. And our coach at the time, I was a lower level, I was the JV coach. He just kind of threw the pamphlets away saying, hey, we shoot enough. But I really liked Bob's philosophy and what Bob said. So I went to the trash can and I picked up a flyer and just kind of kept it for myself. And as Coach said, I coached AAU ball, and a bunch of my kids were looking for a shooting coach. And when they're kind of coming back to me with some of the names of guys that they had as a shooting coach and how much they were charging, I knew that I had Bob's information. And I thought that Bob would be a better fit than some of the other guys that they had. And reached out to Bob. Bob ended up working with a couple of my guys. And from there, I struck up a friendship with Bob. And one day, he just kind of asked me if I would be interested in going and help Luke Walton work out over at the Laker facility. And, I agreed and drove up with them and just watched him work and helped him out any way I could. And from that kind of practice or workout, Bob and I really had a really good connection, working relationship. And I worked with Bob for about 4 years while I was coaching high school basketball and club. And the Clippers one day were just looking for a shooting coach, and he was one of the names on their list, and he was given a chance to kind of come work out Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. And Bob told them that one of the things that he needed was me there. So I was able to go up to the Clipper facility with them, work out, Blake and DeAndre, and I stayed all summer and just, started meeting different people and trying to make different connections. And one day I just got some courage and went up to Vinny Del Negro, who was the head coach at the time, and Gary Sachs, who was the general manager, and just told him that I thought that I could really help their team the upcoming season, and that they could utilize me in any way they saw fit. And it took a little while, but September came and the season was about to start, and the video coordinator at the time offered me an internship in their video room. So I did that for a year. The following summer, Portland was looking for a head video coordinator, and our GM here, Neil O'Shea, was with the Clippers for a while. And he called down to see if they had anyone that could fill the role up here. Our head video guy recommended me, and I interviewed and was given the opportunity to come up here. So I've been here for 7 years. As the video coordinator, player development coach, assistant coach, just kind of working my way up the ladder. And so that's kind of my story and how it happened.
Hey, Coach, what was that interview process like when you went to Portland?
It was really quick. I remember the head video guy with the Clippers, he called me up and said, "Hey, Portland's interested in talking to you." And that night about 10 o'clock, Coach Stotts called me, and I didn't know what number it was from. It was a Milwaukee number, but I answered it, and Coach just talked to me, just kind of asked me a bunch of questions, my background, my experiences, if I thought I could do the job, some ideas that I had. That's pretty much it. But I do remember the one thing that I thought might have really kind of pushed me over the top. I don't know who else they were talking to. My coach asked me to email me my resume. So when I emailed that to him, I remember writing in the email, "Hey, Coach, like, if you hire me, I promise, like, you will never regret hiring me. Like, I'm gonna work my butt off. Like, not a day will go by where you are like, man, we shouldn't have hired him, or we should have hired someone else." And I remember a couple of years ago, Coach and I talked about that, and he brought that up and that meant a lot to me. So, yeah.
No, that's big time. That's big time. And when you have the chance to be able to do that for any of us, right? Whether it's whatever level, being an ops, being an assistant, being a head coach, being an administrator, a video, it doesn't matter. You always want to make sure you take those opportunities and run with it. And I'm sure there'll be some other questions. I have some other questions, but I know you have some film that you want to run through. You want to go through that and talk about some of the things that you guys see on a daily basis or have to deal with, having CJ and all those guys.
Absolutely. Hold on, let me just pull it up here. Can you all see that? So one of the things that we see a lot of, because we have two really strong ball handlers that are also scorers, or we see a lot of blitzes, and a lot of teams blitz us in order to get the ball out of Damian and CJ's hands. So what really struck me out just kind of watching film the last couple of days was it really started with New Orleans. We played them in the playoffs 3 years ago, I believe, 2 years ago. And they would send two guys at Dame and CJ all the time. So here CJ is coming off. You see Anthony Davis stays with CJ, very active hands, turnover. Same thing here with Dame coming. As Anthony Davis stays on him, now if you look at the score, it's 67-50. So Dame's going to be a little bit more aggressive here, but they forced our guards, Dame and CJ in particular, into tough situations and into tough shots. They also, what they did was getting the ball. I mean, most teams blitz because they want to get the ball out of their hands to make other people the threat or the score. So here, Mirotic doesn't even close out, kind of dare Chief to shoot it. But what we do is what we try to teach when we're being blitzed is there's 3 passes that you can make: at the outlet, the next pass, or the fill behind. So here, I think we all can realize that this is the outlet as Zach rolls. If we go back really quick, the teaching point here that we try to make to our bigs is you have to make yourself available, but you also have to make yourself seen. So Zach's rolling, his hands go up, so Damian's alert that he's open. The second teaching point that we do with our bigs is when they catch the ball in a pick and roll or in any situation in the paint, 1, we want them to slow down. We don't want them to be rushed. 2, the pass that we really like is this corner pass to the wing. So we would call that the outlet in a blitz. The second one that we have is the fill behind. So here we have Seth Curry up at the top of the screen. We're asking him to fill behind and to make a play. And then the third one we have is, we call it the next pass. So here we have Chief, and we're asking Dame to look for the next pass ahead. Here it is again. This time as Dame comes off, Evan Turner would be the next pass. Another thing that we kind of just talked about as a staff was another way that we could kind of create an advantage if we knew teams were being aggressive with us was through this action that we called pitch, which kind of also acts as like a 2-man game or a handoff. So we run a lot of pitch. We think that for Dame and CJ, it creates an advantage where it makes them harder to guard and the defense can't load up, coverage. So Gobert usually would be up a lot further, but because it was kind of a hand back, he doesn't know how to guard it. Here, as you can see, the Clippers are very aggressive. Harrell is showing up. But here, as Dame comes off again on the pitch, Harrell doesn't know kind of what to do. Here, Dame's going to come off. He'll throw it back. No, look ahead. So the pitch for us is a great way for us to just kind of put our guys in a position where they can have an advantage. Anytime that you run a pick and roll, so for all of our sets, anytime that we have a pick and roll set, we can also run a pitch into it. So let's just say you have a mid ball screen like we showed there, a couple examples. Anytime our big runs into it, he can come up with his hands up, and that could be, we can get into our pitch action. Pitch and transition is really good. Instead of running a drag, we could run pitch or handbacks. Guys can just go wherever they want. I think for me personally, I think it's a tough action to guard because when you give the ball up, your defender doesn't really know where you're going. So you can read and react. So here, Dame, I think that's Van Vliet that's guarding him and he's really tight on him. Dame can cut back door. He can go back and get the ball. The second thing also is a pitch in transition, just tossing it back, especially to shooters. I know a lot of teams do this with their bigs. So we do it here. Evan has it. Myers is the big. And now we can get into different actions, second side, DHOs, pass and chases. Another concept that I kind of want to talk to you guys about today is using your best player as a screener. So Dame gets a significant amount of attention because, 1, he can shoot the ball from anywhere on the floor. He has unlimited range. 2, he's a great scorer. Same with CJ. And if you look at other teams like Golden State with Steph and Clay, even Boston with Kemba. Last year they did it with Terry Rozier. They utilize their guards as screeners, and they do a really good job. Dame probably is our best screener. He sets the best screens. He's physical. He's not afraid to hit anyone. But when he sets a screen here against the Lakers, ball is not leaving Damian. So now Mo has a free path to the basket because Dame, one, he's making contact on the screen, but two, ball is not going to leave Damian because he's too afraid of Damian getting open. So we create a lot of different mismatches and advantages by using Damian as a screen. Here, Dame sets a back screen on Evan. He's caught up on the screen. Tyus Jones, who's guarding Damian, doesn't want to leave Dame. Here we run a split once again. Both guys, Tim Hardaway Jr. gets hung up on the screen. Jarrett Jack does not want to leave Damian. Also, I think it works the other way. So when guys screen for Damian, they have to look at slipping or moving without the ball. So as Mo screens here for Dame on a back pick, Van Vliet could switch or he's on the top side, but Kawhi wants to stay on Dame, and Mo's able to cut back door for a layup. A couple other things just like to go over with you that we talk about as a staff and a team. We have a saying that we call Blazer basketball. And what Blazer basketball is a lot of movement, ball movement, the ball changing sides of the floor. And one of our sayings that we really like is drive, kick, pass. So we like to drive the ball, kick it out, and then have an extra pass. And that saying is actually in one of our drills, drive, kick, pass. And we really promote this type of movement. There's the drive, the kick, and then the extra pass. So another thing, just watching a lot of basketball games and then seeing a lot of opponents, I thought that this was kind of cool of a concept. We haven't really used it on our team, but I thought it'd be cool to share. It's a big man seal, and Daniel Theis for Boston, he did this about 8 times against us. I only pulled, I think, 3 of them. Anytime so the ball handler was rolling here, Theis would roll into the lane and then seal out our big man so he was unable to help. And I don't know if Boston does this as a teaching point or if this is just him acting, alone, but I just thought it was a very cool concept. We liked it so much when we showed it in film to our bigs that the very next game, we actually did that against Orlando. So you can see Hassan came and sealed in the big to get him. I have a couple plays just to maybe that you guys can use that I really like that we use. One's a baseline out of bounds. We use it on low clock situations. I think it's also just a good play in general. We start off in a box set. The 2 guards are high, and then we have the 5-man or our bigger post. He is on the ball side, and then the 4-man or the opposite post is on the opposite block. So we're going to ask the 2 wings to go to the corner. And then we're popping the opposite big to the free throw line. And we're kind of throwing the ball out before he gets there. So we're leading the opposite post. And then we're having our 5-man turn and seal into the paint. So here it is again. So the guards kind of flash out. We throw the ball in, and we see it. We've been running this play since I've been here. The most notable time that we ran this was my second year here to win a game in Denver. We ran the play. But I thought it's a good, simple play. Like I said, low shot clock, low clock, anytime, even just like a regular play a couple times a game, it's a really good play, especially if you have a really good big man. The last play that I want to talk about is from one of my mentors, Jay Triano. He's the national team coach with Canada for a number of years, head coach with the Raptors and the Phoenix Suns. And he was an assistant coach here in Portland for 3 years. And every day he would come up with these. He'd always just question me, or not question me, but like ask me questions. Do you think this would work, or is this a crazy idea, or what about this? And he had this sideline out of bounds. He said there's 0.4 seconds left or 0.3 seconds left. And how are you going to score? So he said we'd have the inbounder shoot the ball at the basket. And most guys aren't going to goaltend it or hit it off the basket because, it's just natural reaction. And then the second thing is, if you can get it above the cylinder and just tap it, it would count. And it's not basket interference because technically out of bounds, when you taking the ball out of bounds, it can't be considered a shot. So I'd hear for 4 years, hey, this play would work, this play would work, this play would work. So finally, when he was the interim coach with the Phoenix Suns, he had an opportunity to run it, and he ran it to perfection. So he had Bender just throw the ball right to the basket. And if you look at the top of the screen at the Memphis coach here, JB Bickerstaff, he's going like this because he's saying, hey, the ball's in the cylinder, right? That's basket interference. But considering that the ball cannot be considered a shot from the sideline out of bounds, it is not considered basket interference. So 4 years I heard him tell me about that play, and then finally he was able to use it, and it worked to perfection for him. So that's what I got film-wise for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that and were able to take something away from that. Yeah.
No, that's some good stuff, especially that last play. I do have a question. I know obviously you didn't talk a lot about the defensive end, but just in general, having seen a lot of the film, a lot of teams play in the middle of the floor with any ball screen, right? They usually, it seems like they keep it two on two. Is that a big thing for you guys? Like, what are some of the pros, the cons of that? Obviously, you want to play 2 on 2, so you're not giving up threes from the perimeter. But what's your take on that, or speak on that if you can?
Well, we would like to play 2 on 2 because then that way we don't help as much. Our biggest rule is for our big man not to let his guy behind him. So as he's rolling, he cannot allow his man behind him. That way we don't give up lobs or things at the rim. We're very good. We're very big on tendencies also. So we try to, for example, like Harden or Westbrook, we might say like, hey, every time they're in a mid pick and roll, we want to force left or we want to force right, depending on the personnel. But, I think most teams during the pandemic, we've done a lot of kind of watching a film of other defenses and stuff. And a lot of it's based off of personnel and what you have and what's going to fit your team. Two of the better teams that we've watched, Milwaukee and Toronto, they do a really good job of just emphasizing no rim. So they're willing to give up threes. They just don't want anything at the rim. For us, I think we're very similar in that mindset, especially now that we're getting 2 bigs back. We're going to emphasize, hey, we want to take away rim, and then we'll close out and rotate when we can to the 3-point line. But, any level, I feel like help is important. There's going to be breakdowns, and you're going to just have to be able to react to different situations to the best of your ability.
Yeah, and do you think playing 2 on 2 in the middle of the floor is more so an NBA deal, just because in because you can't be in the paint, like help defense can't sit in the paint, And I know, coaches always say that it's, that's very rarely called. Do you guys kind of take that into account? Because I know for us, college-wise, everyone, for the most part, packs loads to the ball, and so now that forces you to kick out. And if you're not a shooter, they close out short, and obviously, like you said, personnel based.
Yeah, we've told our guys, like, if they get a 3-second call, I think we're okay with it. We've actually done studies on the 3-second call, and we find out like most of the 3-second calls are probably in the first quarter, second quarter, and not as many in the fourth quarter. I think you see a lot more teams loading into the paint, packing the paint, kind of later in the game, forcing the referee to make a call. Our biggest thing is, for us, I feel like our biggest thing is just, being in the right positions and then helping each other and then scrambling out, and making sure that we can test all dribbles, all passes, all shots. The guys are too good in the league. I feel like we can have the best game plan in the world, and the guy that we're going against can probably still have 40. So, it's just doing the best job that we can, given the circumstances of whatever play is developing in the mid, in the side, even a step up or a shake too.
Thanks. Aaron, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah. So, just watching some of your earlier clips, a lot of them were 5 out, where your 05 is on the perimeter. Over the course of your 7 years, how much change have you seen in regards to 5 out offense? What are some pros and cons of it? Because we do some of it. That pitch stuff is something that we like to incorporate. But and then how much of it is due to obviously Whiteside's not a stretch 5, but a Josh Collins can step out and shoot a 3. So how much of your offense 5 out is impacted by who you have on the floor and all that?
Okay. So the first question, I think, is, I've seen the game kind of really evolve, I guess, through my 7 years here. Like when we had LaMarcus, we posted up a ton, and we ran a lot of post ups. I think Golden State when they were one of the first teams to use a lot more split action. So when they would post up, they weren't really posting up to score. They were posting up to try to get their shooters open, utilizing them, like I said, Steph and Clay in screens, screening for someone, trying to get open, setting back screens. Now I feel like we ran the same offense. Like those clips were good just because, Nurk was in it and stuff like that, and he's a great passer. But we ran the similar offense even with Hassan. I think that for us and for a lot of other teams that kind of run the similar stuff, it's more about spacing, and having more room and opportunity for their guards to get in the paint, to score.
Do you find it because I'm a Bucks fan, so I watch, they run all that 5 out stuff, and they run the same play over and over and over again with Giannis. But for us, our 5 couldn't shoot the ball this year. So even when we did run that, what we call open stuff, X5 would just plug the paint. Obviously, there's no 3 seconds in college defensively, but do you guys run into issues where, if Whiteside's on the perimeter and he's being guarded, at the elbows or even at the nail? I mean, do you guys find any issues with your spacing?
I'm sure
your guys just that good.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like CJ, but I think what you could tell your 5, if that's the case, if his man's in the paint, if you run the pitch, set good screens, right? It's a great opportunity. The man's back, especially with most bigs probably aren't back against Dame and CJ because they can raise up. So if Hassan was to set a really good screen on someone that was guarding Dame, and Dame came off and he had just a little daylight, that thing is going up. Yeah, so like, and that's why I kind of like that paint seal also, was because
Right.
Hassan was back, because Daniel Theis is not known as a 3-point shooter, right? So you can roll into the lane, you can maybe seal, but I think like if I saw that and the big was back, I'm really telling Hassan, hey, set good screens, get our guards open, and then you're rolling hard to the rim.
That makes sense.
Hey, John, I have a question.
Sure.
This is kind of piggybacking to the blitz that you guys saw a couple years ago with New Orleans. Can you kind of speak? So I know I remember watching your series against Oklahoma City. I noticed that you guys they weren't blitzing you guys that much. Was that due to you guys kind of doing those pitches more? You guys adjusting, or can you kind of just talk about kind of the defensive schemes that you guys were facing during that series?
Yeah. So I don't, the only thing that really sticks out to me about that series was Steven Adams was only really aggressive on step ups. So when the ball is coming, a step up is like kind of like outside the lane line.
Okay.
And as the big's coming up and Dame's coming down going toward the baseline, he's closer to the sideline. So OKC was very, very aggressive on those step ups, and that's one that they wanted to blitz. So what we told our bigs the entire series was, we want you to set the screens so that our guards can get middle.
Okay.
So that was kind of a scouting adjustment. I'm sure that they tried their best. I think game 3, they made an adjustment where they were trying to blitz more. But by then, our guys, we had a lot of confidence, and, we were in a position, I feel like, of strength also, with just the different guys that we had on that team last year. But I have to go back and watch the video of it to see.
Okay.
I just remember like the main teaching point going into that series was, we want to send all of our pick and rolls to the middle, especially on step ups.
Okay. Yeah, I just remembered, I mean, the whole New Orleans series was so kind of like eye-opening, like they were really blitzing you guys. It just kind of surprised me that Oklahoma didn't do that. And do you think it was like the issue of pride? Like maybe Russell didn't want to kind of show that respect that they needed to blitz?
I don't know about what Russell was thinking, but I do know like New Orleans was a lot longer than Oklahoma City also. Like Steven Adams is big, but like you had Anthony Davis, who's really long and athletic, and Mirotic against us that series did a really good job, and he's long and athletic also. And then you have the guards, Rajon Rondo, Drew Holiday. They might be more suited for that type of style than OKC was last year, especially with Roberson. I think he was out for the series last year.
Yeah.
So, I think that kind of plays into it also, is the different personnel that you're going against as well.
Okay. Thanks.
I got a question, John.
Sure.
Matt Okada, Cal Poly. From the outside looking in at the professional game shoot, even in college, you kind of accept the fact that there's just a lot of moving and shaking from players and coaches, across all levels. It seems like Portland, from what I see, is a place that's relatively stable, just in terms of coaching and players and personnel. You've been there 6 years, 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, is this something? Is it as rare as it seems to be? Just at your level, and is there something different or something that you can kind of speak of as to why that's the mentality, and how you feel like you've kind of fit into it?
Yeah. I think that we've had some continuity and longevity because Damian Lillard's really good. and he, you know, he's a strong leader and he's a strong character guy, and he also values continuity and just, you know, comfort, I guess. And I I feel like the more successful as a team you are, and the more successful as you are as an organization, you know, um, everyone within that team gets rewarded and stuff like that. So you see a lot of like our upper management, our head coach, you know, they get new deals and we get new deals and stuff like that because we've been successful. But I really think that that starts because, you know, we have very unselfish and humble players and leaders um, within our organization. And you know, for me, you know, it's been a really great experience here. You know, I've learned a tremendous amount. You know, they gave me my opportunity, you know, first real job within the NBA, and I'm very appreciative and thankful for that. And you know, there's for us, and I can't speak for other organizations because I've only been part of this one really in the Clippers, but um, you know, it's a very, very home feeling, you know, and everyone's very supportive of one another, and there's not a lot of ego. You know what I mean by that? Like I don't, we don't like coach doesn't go, well, we're winning because of me, or one of the assistants is going, we are winning because of me, or anything. You know, like it's very collaborative, and um, if Coach and Neil have done a really good job of making everyone feel very important to the success. And um, you know, for someone like myself, like I love to stay here as long as I can and be part of that culture and be part of that environment, you know, where they um, you know, they understand what I want to do long term, and they're advocating for myself and trying to help me get that experience, and um, put me in positions where you know, I could be successful, just as if, you know, I was one of their players on the team. So, um, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but hopefully,
Yeah, for sure,
yeah.
man. It's awesome to be a part of that. I know as a lot of coaches coming up, you don't always have like options or choices, you know, where you can work at and what environment you're going to be in. You know, it's like a lot of us kind of luck into stuff like that, and when you experience it, it's awesome.
Coach, so what are your next steps that for you?
Um, to move up to be a full-time assistant, and then front of the line bench coach, and then hopefully one day be a head coach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will Lou, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, yeah, this is Will Liu from high school. My question was, having NBA and high school, how much of the stuff that you run in the NBA or that you learned from the NBA would you use with your high school team if you go back?
You know, I think there's a lot of things that I like conceptually, you know, that I think would look good in the high school level. One of the things that I've talked to some high school coaches about is, you know, one of the things that I would do if I was coaching a high school team right now is maybe implement like the four-point line. Um, just kind of having that marking out on the court. And the reasoning is because if you, I go back and I'll watch high school games that I've coached, or just, you know, on ESPN, watch some of the high school. Everyone just kind of hugs the 3-point line, right? And that's where you kind of start your offense. And
we actually have not a 4-point line, but we have like an extended line.
An NBA line or something, right?
It's just the volleyball line. Like, have you ever seen Dame high school highlights? We shoot from the volleyball line.
Yeah, cool. So I think that, you know, like concepts like that, just to kind of teach spacing, would be really good. And then I think it just helps with your shooting also. Like if you have guys that are able to shoot an NBA three, the high school three should just seem really easy for them. But you know, it's funny because like I remember the first practice that I went to with the Clippers, I had my notepad and I was ready to take notes. And I'm like, man, this is an NBA practice. I'm so excited. And it's as if, it was basically like a high school. You start with 3-man weave, start with some passing and ball handling. You're doing shooting, similar shooting drills that we call it 90 and 3, but, I've called it other things at different high schools. You're doing shell, you're doing breakdown drills. So I've always felt like whatever level you're at, you're all kind of teaching the same things and we're all kind of doing the same things. Just the players and stuff like that are a little bit probably more skilled. And they might have a little higher basketball IQ. But yeah, like the 4-point line, definitely. And then maybe some offensive things that I've seen that I think would translate well to that high school level.
Thank you.
Fafa Lu, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
So I got it here. It says, do you prioritize the kick out when implementing the Blazers rule? So the Blazers rule, like I said, is Blazers basketball, and it just means like great ball movement. And we're trying to promote great ball movement. So it's just kind of like when we have a possession where there's a lot of ball movement or great ball movement, we call that Blazer basketball. The drill that we run, it's called drive, kick, pass, and it's 4 guys on the perimeter. And one guy drives it, and when we drive the ball, we try to stress like take 2 dribbles or get into the paint. So we drive, and he's going to kick it out to any one of those 3 guys on the perimeter. So it's a drive, kick, and then that guy who gets it is going to make the extra pass, the next pass. And the guy that drove it is now relocating, and the guys are also kind of shifting or relocating. So then so drive, kick, pass, the guy that got that pass, he's now driving it. So he drives, he's going to kick it, and then it passes. So we put about 24 seconds on the clock, which is the possession. And we have our guys go through that. At the end of the possession, they take a shot. And from there, you can build that drill. You can do a transition drill. You can, secondary offense, pitch ahead, just kind of get them moving. So it's a good warm-up drill. But once again, the priority, I guess, would be, we're trying to drive, kick, and then pass.
John, having watched a lot of the Portland stuff, in my eyes, like if I'm scouting the Blazers, I'm thinking it's going to be a ball screen for CJ or Dame. At the end of the day, there's going to be all this false action. It could be, in the middle. It could be on one of the outside thirds. The corner could be filled. It could not be filled. All these different scenarios, but at the end of the day, it's a ball screen for one of those guys, right? Because they're super elite. They can shoot it. They can create. How much does Coach Stotts put in, throughout the year to be able to get those types of looks? Because obviously, at the NBA level, teams catch on quick. They just have great instincts to be able to defend those different scenarios. And now, so you just have to create different things to get guys moving or cut here to get into a ball screen. How much does Coach Stotts implement to disguise that?
I think he does a good job of, like you say, putting them in a position where like Dame and CJ want the ball at the middle of the court and getting into a mid pick roll. We have a lot of different sets that all kind of end up the same. But I think that where Coach has been very innovative is he utilizes all the players in a lot of different ways to put them in a position of strength also. So not just Dame and CJ. So, Nurk's a great passer. So he's, we utilize him in different positions where he might set a pick and roll and then get the ball. And now he has to make a decision with the ball. CJ, like CJ is really good coming out of the corners off the DHOs. So, I think at the beginning, I'm answering this question poorly, but at the beginning of the year, we have a package of plays that we really like. And, they could be from last year, they could be from teams that we watched in Europe. And we just, once again, I think it's really just based off of personnel based, what best suits our team and what best suits getting Dame and CJ in positions where they can attack and be aggressive. Over the course of the season, I don't know how much we tweak it because we don't have a lot of practice time. But if coach really likes a play or likes an action and wants to see it, I think he might run it as like an ATO. And from there, if we run it a couple times as an ATO, we might be able to put that in the playbook a little bit later during the season.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I do have a question because there's a lot of college coaches on here. Having been around, what are some of the learning curves that you've seen some of those younger guys go through, and how can us as coaches, help shorten those curves or better prepare them for that next level?
So I think that the biggest adjustment for players coming to the NBA level is just how much basketball they get. Most kids, especially at the college level, they're thinking about so many other things, right? School and class and homework and girlfriends and all those things. But, when you get to this level, it's just strictly basketball. The one thing that I think everyone does, especially that I've always seen, is coaches do a really good job, especially at the lower level, of really promoting their love for the game and really teaching the players how to really love the game and study the game. We get a lot of guys that, with experience and stuff, their basketball IQ will improve, their skill will improve. But the ones that really make it, to me, they just really love the game. They love to be in the game. They love to watch the game. They want to learn. They want to get better. So for the college coaches, I'll be honest with you, like all of our guys, they love their college coaches. We have guys that bring out their college coaches to work out with them. We have guys, two of our younger guys, their AAU coach is out here right now. He's shooting with them and stuff like that. And you have such a profound impact on their lives, especially at their formative years, that they really value your guys' input, instruction, how much you care, what you mean to them in their life, everything, So, you guys really are a significant reason why they either make it or they don't, and when they get to us, we know, like for me, I know which kid's really good or has been coached really well and, really loves the game. And I know the ones that are just, here because, they were super talented since they were early on. And, it's just so easy for them and stuff like that. They don't know really how to work. So, just keep on advocating your love for the game to them and keep on teaching them the right habits. One of my favorite sayings that I like to say to our players is, what does practice make? And everyone says, well, practice makes perfect, coach. And I said, well, no, practice makes habits. Practice builds habits. Perfect practice builds perfect habits, which builds perfection. But, if you're just out here running around for 2 hours and not practicing the right things, you're not getting better. So build the right habits, especially when they're at the college level, especially when they're at the high school level, so that when they come to us at this level, their fundamentals are strong, their work ethic is strong, their love of the game is strong.
Yeah, I had a quick question. I'm Adam Hood. I'm an assistant at UTSA. You spent early on, you spoke about helping out a shooting coach. What are some things that you picked up, like in the shooting department? That's something that fascinates me. Like, what are 2 or 3 things that you guys focused on, and what were, some of the things that were non-negotiables, and just what are, just the basic, just shooting and breaking it down? Just can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. the main thing I think for shooting is consistency of form. Bob was very strict, like, you know, I feel like any shooting coach has different ideas of where you should place the elbow and where you should place the ball and where your palm placement is and stuff like that. But Bob always promoted, hey, you have to shoot the ball consistently every single time. Your form has to be consistent. Your arm has to be consistent. Where you pick up the ball has to be consistent. Because the only way to get consistent results is through a consistent shot. So that was always my one takeaway with him, is he was very strong, just saying that wasn't the same shot as before, or you didn't jump the same way, or you didn't land the same way, or the ball was too high on the forehead. Your follow through wasn't the same. We have a tracking system also here. It's called the NOAA. And I think they're a pretty good program, but they track, ball flight and then the arc distance, the arc flight and then the distance and stuff like that. And we utilize that a lot with our guys. And, what we're trying to look for is that, are you being consistently shooting the arc the same in that range? Is your depth the same? Is it going left or right? Things like that. And we take a look at that. And, we've talked a lot about that with our guys, just being consistent with your shot.
Hey, John, can you walk through kind of your day-to-day duties preparing for the game and on game day, please?
So game day, we have shoot around at 10 a.m. We have a coaches meeting at 8:30, 8 o'clock, I believe. So we meet as a staff at 8 o'clock. We go over the game. Whoever's coach it is, scout it is, will present it to the coaching staff. And we'll just kind of discuss different things. Hey, defensively, this is what we want to do coverage-wise. And then we just talk about different actions that the other team's running. And we put together, the scout will have basically, hey, this is what I would like to do. And then as a staff, we kind of discuss it and write up a practice plan, go through drills that we're going to go through with the team. Shoot around starts at 10 a.m. and it's usually about an hour. It starts with film. So we'll come into the theater, we'll watch film, and then we go out on the court. And we're usually done in about an hour. Guys might stick around and get some extra shots before the game. Then everyone's kind of out of the office by like 12. And we ask our guys to be at the arena by 4. And we have workouts. About every guy on our team has about a 15 to 20 minute slot where they get, their pregame warm up and workout in. 35 minutes we meet in the locker room to go over personnel and just to review different coverages and review different things that we're going to do during the game. And I think, as coach said before, and hopefully we win. So that's kind of a normal game day for us, our schedule.
For your scout, can you break that down a little bit further in terms of what you're watching and how much film you're watching to prepare those?
Sure. So each coach we break it down. So there's about 5 of us that get scouts. So we all get teams and games and stuff like that. It's about 15, probably maybe 15, 16 scout games a year. And we break down the last 5 games that the team has played. So if we're playing Sacramento, their last 5 games, we're going to have video on. And then we also utilize our last game against them a lot. Yeah. And when we watch them, we're just looking for tendencies, offensive tendencies, defensive tendencies. Are they doing anything different than the last time we played them? Who's playing now? Who's in the rotation? Who's not out in the rotation? Some just, once again, like tendencies like, hey, Buddy Hield's shooting 60% the last 3 weeks. Things that we have to make note of. We put together a little scouting report. We have an advanced scout. He goes to all the games. Sends us like a little scouting report with the plays drawn up and everything. And
Is it true that you guys give those advanced scouts like really good seats to kind of hear the play calls too?
I haven't been a scout, so I don't know.
Okay.
But from my conversations with our advanced scout, I think it just depends on the arena.
Okay.
Some arenas will put you kind of way off, and some guys will put you closer and stuff like that. So, he's able to go there, get the play calls, and relay them back to us, and we're able to kind of know or have an idea of what the other team's running.
Okay.
Then we go through shoot around, walk through some plays, puts implement the game plan, talk about the game plan. We go over defensive coverages with our guys, different things that we want to do, and just kind of review and go at it.
Cool. Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I'm asking a question on behalf of Fafa, but he put in the chat for usual game motion. Do you prioritize the kick out over inside passes or dump offs due to just being safer with turnovers?
I don't think we emphasize finding the right guy, and I think Dame and CJ are really good at knowing who they should be passing the ball to. Obviously, if Hassan's rolling or Yusuf or Zach are rolling, and they're open, I feel like Dame and CJ would give them the ball in that situation. Or even if they're in the dunker and that's the right play, that's they get the ball. Whereas, if they're driving and the defense is collapsed and now, we have a guy open on the weak side, then we'll make that pass. But for those two guys or any of our guys, really, we just, I think, prioritize more than anything just making the right play or the right read. But, I don't know if certain situations, I don't know if there is a right or wrong read, right? I think it just kind of happens. And, there's times where I've shown guys clips like, hey, he was open here. And he's like, yeah, but I saw this, So going back and just kind of making them aware of what was open or what they maybe didn't see that time so that they can be more aware of that next time.
I'll ask a question and then just for the group, if anyone else has any other questions, we'll have a couple more and then we'll round out our call. But for my question, is there anyone that you kind of look up to as a mentor or kind of strive, just bounce things off of? Obviously, the NBA it's a fraternity, much like just the game and basketball in general. Is there anybody out there that you kind of lean on a little bit?
Yeah, I consider like Coach Stotts to be a really good mentor and someone that I really talk to and lean on. I know he's my boss and stuff like that, but the thing that I've always really appreciated about him is he's never really told me what I can and can't do, and he's always allowed me a lot of freedom to make everything my own. I think in talking to other people in my position and stuff, their coaches or their management was like, look, this is your role, like this is the only thing that you're allowed to do, like just do that. But coach has always been like, hey, if you want to go work out guys, and if you want, I asked him for scouts 4 years ago, and he's like, sure, we'll give you scouts and stuff like that. So I've always been very appreciative of the fact that like having a boss and a mentor that I can kind of just talk to and rely on, and that to me has my back and really just wants me to be successful. I think that's important. And then just other coaches within the league that I've worked with, like Jay Triano, who we showed that clip of, and Robert Pack, he's with the Wizards, and just other people just within the league, and one guy who's actually on the call, Shenton Way, you know, I consider him a very good friend and mentor and someone that I can talk to and, just bounce ideas off of and, just talk basketball with. And, I feel like someone like him, is just great to have as a friend and just someone that I can talk to. Because, if I get down or something, or I just feel a little upset, and I feel like every time I've talked to him, he's always uplifted my spirits, and he's just made me feel better. Like, you're gonna make it, or you can do that, or, different things like that. So, I'm very appreciative of that from him and other people that I've worked with and just um, been around.
Hey, John, this is Steve Yang. Thanks so much for jumping on the call. This is great. I second you on Shenton, man. He's a great guy. Does a lot for the game in itself. So I had a quick question in regards to working out players. Do you work out when you're working out certain players? How do you get your mindset to change? So you're working out a guy like CJ, a guy like, let's say, Dame or so, and then you're working out maybe I don't know if you're working out the post players or not too, but
Yeah.
how does that change your mentality, and what do you do to change it?
Well, for me, I write down kind of some ideas of things that I want to get done with the guys, and it's collaborative also because I've talked to them about it. Like, hey, see, like we really got to work on X, Y, and Z, and like this week we're really going to focus this, and then like Mario, like, hey, this week we really got to focus on this and this. So I think I have an idea of what I want to do with them before I get on the court with them. And then for me, it's kind of a lot of it is getting their minds right too. Like they might not want to go as hard or work out as hard and stuff like that, and kind of being positive and having a great attitude and being uplifting so that they can feed off of your energy, and their balance is getting a little bit better and stuff like that. The one thing that I'll say is, it really depends on the time of the year and what you're trying to get out of each workout. During the summer, I feel like we're trying to get the guys in better shape. And then during the year, it's really being really technical and efficient with your time because you don't have a lot of time. So, if you need to get them a sweat, I feel like we can all get our guys sweat workouts, having them run up and down, hitting the lines, running around the court, just getting them a sweat. But if we, have to really focus in on certain things, just being technical while also kind of getting some conditioning in as well, I think is just very beneficial for the guys. Yeah.
No, it's good, definitely. Don, do you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, Coach Jonathan. Donald Yado here from the Philippines. I played professional ball for about 16 years. After I retired, I went straight into coaching. So I know the grueling schedule of NBA, and also same with our league. We practice pretty much, we play pretty much year round in our schedule, 11 months out of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So we pretty much have practice every day. I just wanted to know, I've played with imports and, who came from the NBA and went over to our league. They told me about the schedule of the NBA. So take me through about like the difficulties of like a back-to-back-to-back games, and also having to try to preserve your players. And my second part of the question is, who are your leaders and your hardest working players there on the team? So, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. What was the first part again? So you want how we preserve
take me through about the schedule of your
Yeah.
like something like a back-to-back-to-back games and recovery. I know for professional players that's the most important thing for us.
Yeah.
So take me through that and how you guys deal with the players.
So we're very big on recovery also. We do play a lot of games, and Portland is we're the furthest away from everybody, so we travel the most. Like every year, we travel the most miles and everything. So it's very taxing on everyone's body. So we do promote a lot of rest and recovery with our guys. You know, we have massage therapists, we have an acupuncturist, we have a full health and performance staff that's really mindful of each player. We do a lot of tracking. So CJ, for example, he runs the most. I think he averages the most miles per game in terms of running. Um, so being mindful of that and kind of just understanding what their bodies are going through and the load that they're taking. You know, like I said earlier, we don't practice a lot. It's because a lot of our guys are playing a lot and the games are a lot. So we don't just have 3 days between games. So, you know, during the off days, we will come in, we'll just watch film, you know, we'll have extended film sessions. You know, we'll let the players kind of get the shots up that they want. We're not forcing them to run a lot or do a lot of things. You know, back-to-backs are tough, especially when you're on the road, because after one game, you don't get out of that city till 11. You land in the next city at 1. You get to the hotel by 2. You know, you're up for a breakfast meeting by 10. You know, as coaches, we're up by 8 for a coaches meeting. You know,
time zone too, right?
Well, those are the worst ones. You know, when you're traveling 3 different time zones. But we do a really good job. Our health and performance staff does a really good job of just tracking their sleep and monitoring their sleep and their recovery. And they do a really good job of also communicating with the coaching staff. Hey, the guys probably need a day off. Like today should be a blackout day. We shouldn't be doing anything today. They need to rest their bodies. They need to rest their minds. You know, we just got home after a 12-day road trip. Like we shouldn't be doing anything that next day. Let them go home, enjoy their families and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we take it in terms of recovery. Yeah. You know, I had a guy that was here last year and he went to Europe and he told me that they go twice a day and they would travel into a city and then as soon as they land, they're doing wind sprints and then they go to a hotel rest and then they come back and they're doing a full contact practice. So he didn't last the year, but
probably in Europe.
Yeah.
Serbia.
It's just crazy over there, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just different things and ideas and philosophies on what you believe in recovery and what you think the guys need. In terms of who our hardest workers are, you know, Dame's our hardest worker. Like he's in here early. He's first, you know, the old saying, first one in, last one out. He no one works harder than him. And I think it's really good, especially when your best player and your leader is leading by example. You know, he's not vocal and he's not calling out guys or yelling at guys or anything like that, but he's just showing them by example. You know, about me, you know, I've had a really tough year because last year I was in an accident and I broke 3 bones, broke my leg and everything. And I remember it was really tough to wake up and get to practice and get to work this year. A lot of times because my leg just hurt. And I remember we were playing Golden State and CJ was out. I think Hassan was out. I don't know if Melo played. And it was just Damian. At one time, we had like 4 young guys and Dame on the court. And I think Dame had 60 in the game. We won in double overtime. Golden State didn't have anybody. But he had 55, 60 points. And I remember sitting there on the bench and I go, what? You could just see how much Dame wanted to win and how badly he wanted it and how much he was giving of himself. And for me, as someone that was hurting physically, like I looked at him and I was like, man, I have to get to work. Like I have to do my job because I don't want to let him down, you know? And he didn't call me out. He didn't tell me that, you know, hey, you got to work harder or anything like that or anything, right? It was just the way that he played, the way that he was carrying himself, the way that he was just going about his normal day and how much he cares about it, it just made me feel like I had to pull my weight, and I couldn't let him down because he was giving so much. And I thought, I thought that that was the truest sign of what a great leader was in that moment for me. And it just really spoke volumes of who he was as a leader for our team. Was if I felt that way, I know a lot of other members of our staff and our players felt that way too. Was they just don't want to let him down too.
Okay, nice. So just if I may squeeze this in, as we all know, players, the locker room is very sacred. And has there anything like been like any adversity that you guys have gone through amongst the players where they have gone at each other, and have they resolved that during that time?
And once again, like that's because of, I think it gets resolved because Dane is such a strong leader and CJ is a strong leader. Like when guys come to Portland, like we had a guy that came to Portland and he was wearing an earring, at practice. And Dame first practice, Dame just went up to him and said, "Hey, like we don't do that here, like that's just not how we do things here." And the next day he just got in line, like okay, that's it. I'm sure that there has been squabbles and some talk within the locker room, but you don't ever hear in the news or anything about it, like, hey, so-and-so got in a verbal argument or so-and-so got in a fight. And I think that's because Dame and CJ do a really good job of policing that locker room and just making sure that, one, nothing gets out, but two, everything just stays in there and it's squashed really quickly.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Coach, even for AK as well? Either one of them can, they're still on if you guys have any questions for them. If not, we're going to wrap up. Good. Okay. I want to thank you guys. Thank you everyone so much. First and foremost, thank you, John and AK, for your time and being on here to talk to us and give us a different light, I guess. And thank you, Anthony, for moderating. I appreciate you and your time. Obviously, Garrett, for all that you do. This is also, week 6 now. I appreciate all that. Mike was able to jump on. He's kind of busy. There's some things going on his end, but thank you, Mike, for jumping on and being a part of this. And we'll hopefully hear some great news soon. But, on behalf of Asian Coaches Association, we want to keep this rolling. We want us to grow. You guys kind of share this with your friends on your social media posts to kind of get more people to grow in the game. And, this has been a great week this week. Next week, we'll do it again. We look to have 2 other speakers, Hernando and Planels and Rich Saywich. I hope I pronounced his name right. So Rich is at Simona State, the head coach there, and Hernando is